What's going on, everybody, and welcome on in to episode 245 of the Garage Beers podcast, brought to you proudly here on the Orange and Brown Report streaming network. The OBR is the best place in Cleveland for Browns coverage and to hang out with us, have a couple beers, and talk about the Browns, the Buckeyes, the Blue Jackets, the Cavs, the Guardians, and everything else we choose to talk about. We've got a great episode planned for you here tonight, but again, make sure you are over at theobr.com and you hit subscribe. Make sure you're following the OBR on all the socials, as right now the OBR is getting ready to kick it into high gear, and the Browns are already making news this offseason, and we will get into that a little bit further here in just a minute, but make sure you're tuned into everything OBR. Make sure you go follow our show on the socials everywhere at The Garage Beers. And like I said, big show tonight. With you as always, I'm your host, Michael Keefe. Find me online at Garage Beers Mike, and joining me over on the east side of Cleveland tonight, find him online at Garage Beers Chad. It's Chad Meyer. What's up, Chad?
How are you?
How you doing?
Just fine. Just fine. Hey, last time we talked, I didn't ask you how your Christmas was. How'd your Christmas go?
Man, my Christmas was good, man. We really we put all the emphasis and focus on the kids.
Okay.
So we just did a kids Christmas. Katie and I didn't buy anything for each other. Well, we sort of did, but I'll get to that in a minute. But really, it was just all about the kids and making sure they had a great time. And man, it was nice. It was nice. It was. I think a lot of people for a lot of people, the holidays are super hectic and crazy. For us, it was kind of like just family time. You know, we obviously saw grandparents, aunts, and uncles. It was just a nice time. It was nice. How about you?
Huh?
Was Santa good to you?
Oh, it was just fine. Well, we usually try to make it about the kids, but my wife obviously at the beginning of the day had to make it about her. So I first of all, Fletch got up at like 2:30 in the morning. I said, no, Christmas is not starting at 2:30 in the morning, you dick. So you're going back to sleep.
Santa's still drunk, kid. Go to sleep.
Yeah. He could still take your presents back. He ain't done yet. So I go to in his room, and he's tossed and turned until like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I finally fall back asleep. And then an hour later, Hazel just comes busting into the room. Dad, Mom broke her foot. I said, what? So I got up, I shot up, and I came downstairs. I ran downstairs. They went to get coffee because Starbucks is open on Christmas Day. So they ran to get coffee. They came back, and we have a split level. So our garage has, a couple of stairs that leads into the laundry room. It doesn't have like a basement. Apparently, she missed a step at the bottom and rolled on her foot, and her ankle gave out. And I was totally convinced that she broke it because the side of her foot just swelled up and bruised immediately. So we started the morning dropping the kids off at the mother-in-law's and going to the ER. But luckily, no break, just a sprain, which some say can be worse than a break. So that's cool.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animals.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the poor thing got COVID like a few days later. So, yeah, it was a miserable break for her, but everybody else was great.
I know. Well, again, peeling back the curtain a little bit, you guys were supposed to come over to our house for a New Year's Eve party, and then the COVID thing hit. And we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen for sure. Well, good, man. I'm glad you're here. Again, our timing is just weird right now with the holidays and travel and all that kind of stuff. So we're actually recording this episode on Monday night. We're going to play it live on Tuesday. So if you're watching this live, it's not really live. This is Monday, but we're going to get into some awesome stuff. We have got a couple great special guests coming up. 9:30-ish. We want to talk to one of our best friends here on the podcast, Dave Maetzold, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets for Bally Sports or FanDuel. I don't know what it is anymore. FanDuel Sports, I guess. But Columbus, because we got a Blue Jackets team here in Ohio that's pressing for a playoff spot as we hit the halfway mark of the NHL season. So we'll catch up with Mets on that. Then we're going to bring in Carter Rodriguez, another one of our buddies from the Chase Down podcast. We got maybe the biggest basketball game of the season coming up this week. Cavaliers, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Cavs on a 10-game winning streak, the Thunder on a 15-game winning streak, the two best records in the NBA clashing in Cleveland Wednesday night. We're going to talk with Carter about all that. And we got a lot more stuff to get to. But before we get to any of that, we can't kick things off without doing our garage beers of the week. So, Chad, why don't you kick us off? What's your garage beer of the week this week?
Well, this is clearing out my fridge. I'm finally getting rid of the fall beers here, Mike. North High Brewery Oktoberfest. Let's go.
Yeah, it's the Oktoberfest from Munich.
Found it in the back of the fridge, and this is Oktoberfest. And just drinking that tonight, and finally I could move on to my winter beer.
Prost.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Oktoberfest there. My beer is themed and timely, and this was also in the back of the fridge, but I was like, I'm glad I saved it for the right time. I got the Great Lakes. Whoop, can't see it.
Okay. All right.
Mexican lager.
Nice.
The Great Lakes Mexican lager. Why? Because my alarm is set for 4:30 in the morning tomorrow. We're heading down to Hopkins. We're going to jump on a flight, and me and the wife. It was our 10-year anniversary this year, and we didn't get a chance to do any kind of special trip or anything. And so we are going down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and we are having ourselves a time down there, and I cannot wait. So Mexican lager right here. Look at that. Crisp, light. Just what you want to have on a Mexican beach, and that's where I'll be.
Nice. Perfect.
So,
all right.
Yeah, that's my beer.
Yeah. Watch out for the cartels.
Maybe, yeah. I don't think we have to worry about that so much down there. But
well,
I will. I'll keep my eye out for him, and if I see him, I'll tell him you said hi.
Okay, good. Tell him
that's what you meant, right?
Tell him they're late on the delivery of the product.
Yes, all right. I'll tell him. Gustavo Fring up here. Chad Fring wants his product.
How am I supposed to make him any money if I don't have anything to sell?
All right, fair. Good point. FBI, if you're listening, we know you are. This is a joke. This is a joke. This is a total joke. All right, I don't want to waste any time because our special guest is coming on soon, and I want to hit on two things before we get to it. So I want to take about 10 minutes here and talk about the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, we are in full off-season mode now. The Browns played what is just a sham of a football game against the Cincinnati Bengals this last week. I didn't watch it. Well, I actually did watch it. I didn't care that I was watching it. I had no rooting interest in it. But the season is finally over. 3-14, the record for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And they wind up, thank God, for some reason, the New England Patriots came out and won a game at the last second there.
Well, the Bills set everybody.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's what somebody was like. Somebody was like, well, what if the Ravens sit their starters, which they weren't going to do because they were fighting for the division.
Right.
I was like, the Ravens could have played, all of the Ravens players could have played their grandmothers and they would have beat the Browns.
Oh, man. I would have loved to see Miles sack a grandma.
Look out, Grandma Jackson.
No, you're going down.
Nah, I was, it was cool to see Jerry Jeudy get the franchise record for receptions in a season and all that stuff. But otherwise the game didn't matter. But the Browns wind up with the number 2 overall pick. So there's two things I really want to talk about with you, Chad. And one of them, we'll get to the draft part in a minute. And I know it's super early, but Andrew Berry had his kind of postseason press conference today. And I do think there were a couple takeaways. One, and I don't know how much you caught up on it, Chad, but the way he talked about Deshaun Watson, first of all, he called it a setback. And I should have sent you the picture, but somebody posted a GIF online that was Deshaun Watson said he's feeling pretty good in his rehab. And then it was like that scene from, I think it was maybe Training Day where Denzel Washington steals the gun from a guy and points it at him.
Yeah.
And it's Andrew Berry's the hell you are.
I've seen a few of those. They're pretty good.
Andrew Berry.
There was also the one where Vince McMahon was in the hospital and Stone Cold was the nurse behind there. He went and beat him up. Yeah.
So
he gone.
It sounds like the plan is in motion as far as he's not there. They can't cut him. But the plan sounds like it's very much in motion that Deshaun Watson's probably going to be a pup guy next year, physically unable to perform, and they'll probably do everything they can to recoup as much of their money because he does have his salary insured. A portion of it is insured.
Yeah.
And that could help them recoup money going into the following year. So again, it made it sound very obvious that the plan is in motion.
Good. I mean, at least they're doing that. I mean, first off, I'm so excited for a break from this godforsaken team.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to get much of one because there's going to be stuff to talk about, but at least we don't have to watch them play.
At least we don't have to watch them play, and B, at least we don't have to talk about them until there's actually something newsworthy coming out, whenever the new offensive coordinator comes out. Good, but this is what you were hoping to see as a Browns fan, right? Because if they had the gall, the audacity to even try to bring him back and do something for this football team next year, there was going to be hell to pay. I mean, and I'm talking, you might have had way more empty seats in that stadium next year than they ever expected. So yeah, I mean this is something that had to be done.
And
right?
again, we're going to hit on a couple subjects, so we're going to kind of fly through a couple things with the Browns and then move on to the next thing.
Sure.
Two fan favorites that got brought up pretty frequently in the press conference. One, Myles Garrett. Two, Nick Chubb. Those two guys got talked about very differently by Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry, when asked about Myles Garrett, basically came out and said, listen, I want Myles Garrett to just have a direct road from Cleveland to Canton. Basically saying, he said, I want that dude to retire in Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns are going to do everything they can to just keep Myles Garrett in Cleveland. I think Myles Garrett actually made a comment recently that I think some people took as like, ooh, something's in the works. But I think what he meant was something's in the works as far as like maybe an extension for him. But the conversation was very like, don't worry, Myles isn't going anywhere from Andrew Berry.
Yeah.
This was a little different about Nick Chubb. It was more like, man, we love Nick Chubb. We appreciate everything that he's done here, and we'll just kind of have to see how we can proceed forward. And I think it's time to start coming to terms. I don't think Nick Chubb's going to go anywhere between this now and next year, but I think it's time to start coming to grips with we're probably coming to the end of the Nick Chubb era in Cleveland.
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the end of the guardrails, the age guardrails for Nick Chubb, and obviously that devastating injury, he's not going to be the same. And 95, he's going to be here. You better keep him happy. That's all you got to say. I mean, if this is the road that they're taking, like this press conference was probably the most transparent I think I've ever seen Andrew Berry outside of.
He took a lot of accountability.
Yeah, outside of JOK, obviously.
I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, I don't know either. But this is the most transparent I think he's ever been. And, with the way he's talked about Myles Garrett and with Myles putting pressure on them publicly a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, you can bet your bottom dollar something, Andrew Berry's going to do everything he can to turn this roster around next year. So
to his credit, though, Chad, I think Andrew Berry seemed comfortable with the pressure Myles Garrett was putting on him. I feel like he was like, it very much felt like Andrew Berry's like, listen, like, there's a lot of things that have not gone the way we want them. He basically called the trade for Deshaun Watson a mistake.
Yeah.
He basically said none of this has worked out the way we thought or hoped that it could.
Yeah.
That happens. That was great to hear.
For sure.
It was like he was comfortable with, okay, listen, I will take accountability and you can put the pressure on and I want to respond to it. I love that. The JOK thing, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But what I really don't understand is like the guys in the room, the reporters. Why is nobody asking him like, hey, why are we being so hush-hush about this JOK thing? Like
I wonder if they got directed to and not ask anything about it.
I don't. Okay. It's the end of the year and you guys are 3-14. Direct your own ass.
Okay. Wow.
I don't. Why? If one reporter was like, any status update on JOK? And Andrew Berry's like, yeah, just what Kevin said yesterday. We don't have any meaningful updates. The follow-up is, hey, why?
Yeah.
Like, why is this like we're keeping this in the closet kind of deal?
Right.
And they never ask it. So
right.
Again, I think to me, another big takeaway, coaching decisions are Kevin's, personnel decisions are Kevin's and Andrew's.
Yeah.
And Andrew Berry made that clear. Like Kevin Stefanski is going to be responsible for whoever they bring in as an offensive coordinator, whoever that might be, because Ken Dorsey's gone. They're going to need an offensive line coach, which we knew about anyways. But all that's going to fall at the feet of Kevin Stefanski. I think that little bit of clarity is nice. But, Chad, the last couple of minutes I want to spend talking about the Browns here is this. One of the other things Andrew Berry said about personnel, he said, quarterback room is going to look very, very different.
And he was blatant about that.
Yep.
Right. Again, and that goes back to this is the most transparent I've ever seen him. Right. This was as transparent as any NFL GM could get. Without being like, yeah, we fucking suck this year. Yeah, we fucking suck this year.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's good. And that's a good thing. All of the things that you heard from Andrew Berry in this press conference were good things this year. It's what you wanted to hear, right? You didn't want to hear. I mean, obviously it's pandering to the fans, but, but there was a sense of realness behind it as well. I mean, you could tell if someone is being fake because that this is what the fans wanted here. Because obviously Browns fans didn't want to think it was going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But this seemed the most real conversation that you could get without being any sort of GM speak at all.
Right. Yeah, and listen, God, I had people screaming at me online about this, but I think your quarterback room, I think Deshaun Watson's on the pup. He's still going to be on the Browns, but he's going to be pup list. I think your quarterback room next year is going to be a veteran they bring in. Look out again, Kirk Cousins. Well, I think they're going. I think they will go for that if they can.
Yeah, if they can make the trade. I don't know if you saw the report that the Falcons plan on keeping him unless he gets traded.
I think I think their top pick. If I had to bet money right now, that top pick is going to be a quarterback unless they trade out of it.
You have to.
Yep. I think your quarterback room next year is a veteran, a highly chosen rookie, and DTR. I think that's your quarterback room next year. I had people screaming at me, no, you got to get rid of DTR. I'm like, why would you get rid of a guy going into his third year? He's young. He's your third string quarterback. He's on a cheap contract, and he's the only guy in that room then that's going to kind of know the system. And he will be of use there. And I had people screaming at me like, he's no good. And I'm like, yeah, if you get your third string quarterback on the field, you're fucked anyways. Like, what are we talking about?
Quarterback is good. Like who? Like, are you expect who's?
Where are these teams that have these gold mines of third string quarterbacks on their roster?
Oh, but Trey Lance almost beat the Commanders, Mike. What are you talking about?
Somebody told me. Somebody tell me I'd rather have Bailey Zappi. I'm like, didn't you watch the game? Bailey Zappi threw the ball directly to a 400-pound guy. Didn't even see him.
Yeah, no.
And no discredit to Bailey Zappi. These guys are all any guy you're going to sign with the understanding that he's going to be like a third string quarterback is going to be in that vein. It's DTR, Bailey Zappi, like those kind of guys. PJ Walkers, those are the guys you're gonna find that are going to be willing to come in and be a third string quarterback. So it's going to be DTR, and it should be.
Yeah, I know you wanted to touch on the draft, Mike, but that's basically it. That's my take. You have to take. I know everybody wants Mason Graham. I know everybody wants, Abdul Carter. But
I wouldn't be mad about that.
Trying. You have no one's, and I won't be mad either. But you have got. None of it matters. We talked about it last week. None of it matters unless you have your quarterback, and none of it does.
I think the Browns. We're already starting to see it happen. This seems to happen every year, where the top quarterback throughout the entire college football season. Then when draft time comes around, everybody's trying to look at why they're not the top quarterback. And then everybody else starts getting talked about. But right now, the hot name is Cam Ward in Florida. And I love him too. But man, all year it's been Shedeur Sanders. Sure. And now everybody's like, oh, the Tennessee Titans are enamored with Cam Ward. And that's who they love. And it's like, well, maybe Shedeur's not that guy. And I'm like, I know there's like a thing you maybe are nervous about with the Sanders family and Deion, and are they going to big time you, and do they want to come to Cleveland or whatever? But like, assuming that's all fine, Shedeur was like the number one guy all year round. If the Browns wind up with him, let's go. I'm good with it.
Either one. Whoever Tennessee doesn't take, you have to take the other one.
Yeah.
It's a foregone conclusion, right? Again, if Travis Hunter's the name called, or if Abdul Carter, or if Mason Graham, or whoever is the name called,
cool with that.
I'm cool with it, but at the same time, I'm also going to be like, okay, now what the fuck are we going to do at quarterback?
It doesn't fix that problem.
You cannot, if you're in a position to take a potential franchise quarterback. No one's saying these guys are slam dunks, and I get that. I get why people are a little skeptical of taking them. If you are in position to take one of the two best quarterbacks in this draft class, you have got to take them, because you don't have shit figured out at quarterback. And until you do, no matter what offensive playmakers you add, no matter what offensive coordinator you add, no matter what, explosive defensive end you have to play, none of it matters unless you have your quarterback in the NFL. None.
I also do think there's probably a little bit of fire to the smoke of Drew Aller's name resurfacing.
Yeah, great. I would love to take him too.
I think there's a little fire to that smoke, so we'll see what happens there. Anyways, so the Browns, the offseason has begun, and I do think I like the start by Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry and the tone that they are setting. And again, for Kevin Stefanski, his tone was with actions. He walked in the door and fired Ken Dorsey, and he fired his offensive line coach, and that's actions speak louder than words, and I like that about what Kevin Stefanski did to start. So, Chad, we worked hard all day to try to find a guest to come in and talk Buckeyes with us, but we're going to shift over now. We're going to shift to the college football playoffs here for the next 10, 12 minutes or so. And it's college football playoff time, and oh boy.
Here we are.
Last time we talked, it was all about Ohio State, Oregon. And man, did Ohio State make a statement just like they did against Tennessee. They did the same damn thing to Oregon, but they did it worse. Ohio State jumped down Tennessee's throats. They did it worse to Oregon. They were up. The Buckeyes were up, 31-0 at some point.
Yeah.
I love the fact that Oregon got like the wraparound touchdowns, the one right before the half and the one right after the half, and it never mattered. Will Howard's playing really good football right now. The running backs and the offensive line are playing really good right now. And God damn it, if they aren't just dead set on getting the balls to their playmaking receivers, it's what we've been screaming about, and it's what they're doing. And to top it all off, the defense is right now the best defense in the country. They are unbelievable out there right now. The Buckeyes are rolling.
I gotta admit, I held my breath a little when they made it 34-15, and they went 3 and out the next drive. I said, "Oh man, if Oregon gets a touchdown here, they can make things interesting." But when they got that stop, then I went, "Yeah." And then it all went to, yeah, this is one of the more, this is again another dominant performance by the Buckeyes. And it was that first half was the most perfect half of football I think I've ever seen at any level.
Yeah.
Just absolute pure domination. Will Howard was accurate. Oregon, it's like they didn't even plan for Jeremiah Smith. It's like they were it's like they were like, nah, listen.
Who the hell is this guy?
He's running a flag route and he's wide open. Are you gonna take him? No, you're gonna take it. No, just leave him there. You won't see him. Yeah. It's like they didn't even plan for that guy. But yeah, he's a man among boys. If he came out in the draft this year, he would be the number 1 pick. Like it would be Jeremiah Smith, Shooter Sanders, Cam Ward, and everybody else. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what more you can say. I mean, it was a high-powered Oregon offense. I kind of thought this was going to be a little bit more of a back-and-forth game, and it just wasn't. Ohio State was ready. They were completely ready.
Defense just unbelievable.
Everything Oregon was throwing at them, and it was just an unreal effort. I mean, you knew Oregon was too good to be held scoreless. So you knew they were going to get a couple of touchdowns, but it never at any point outside of that 3 and out in the third quarter, but outside of that, it never felt at any point that Oregon was going to come back remotely in this football game. So just 2 straight dominant performances by the Buckeyes, and they're going up against a very good but inconsistent Texas team. And I expect them more of the same. I just do.
Well, so let's talk about just again last weekend.
Yeah,
Texas barely survives overtime against Arizona State. What a comeback! Yeah. Texas up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, like halfway through the fourth quarter, and Arizona State comes back, ties the game up. They get to overtime. A wild no call on a targeting that maybe would have allowed Arizona to win that game in regulation. It was a wild no call. I know people are like, oh, if you make that call there, it changes the outcome of the game. But if you don't make the call there, it changes the outcome of the game.
It was textbook targeting.
Man, I talked to a buddy of mine that is a Division I college football official, and he texted me back. He was like, that was targeting. Like that was He said there are some factors that were like overly egregious that they look for, but like it was pretty clear. So Texas survives Arizona State. On the other side of things, Notre Dame, a really impressive outing by Notre Dame in that just locked in this ugly offensive battle against Georgia. But in the second half, Notre Dame really turned things on, dominated the line of scrimmage against the Georgia Bulldogs. So Notre Dame advances, and the last team to get to the Final Four is the team that everybody said had the easiest path, and they certainly seem to have. Penn State gets by SMU. Penn State gets by Boise State. And so now the Final Four in college football: Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State.
Can we talk about the Penn State and Boise State for a second? Listen, you kind of figured that, Penn State was going to jump on Boise a little bit, right? Just incredible defense. And, it felt like Penn State was going to be able to run all over Boise State. I got to tell you something, though. Ashton Genty, I know it seemed like that Penn State was shutting him down, but there was about 10 or 12 carries, especially in that first half, where it looked like Penn State was just going to stuff him for 1 yard.
Yeah.
But he would turn it into 3, 4, 5 yards. That guy is a special football player.
It was a bad time for him to get a case of the fumbles. That ball was coming out of his hands way too much.
Yeah, for sure. But he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
That's true. That's true.
As well, when he's got 8 defenders pawing at the ball. But there was times where it looked like he was just going to be shut down totally, and he just turned it into like a 4 or 5 yard gain.
Yeah,
the kid is special, I think, and he deserves to be a first round pick.
So let's talk about these two semifinal games. Here's the Orange Bowl. I don't know why I didn't remember that the Orange Bowl was a semifinal. The Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. Let's start with the Orange Bowl, and let's start with, I think, a matchup. It's odd to me the way I hear people talking about it, because the way I hear people talking about it is, Penn State had the easy route, and now they're going to run into Notre Dame, and they're going to get smushed. And I personally feel differently about this game. I think on paper, at least, Notre Dame and Penn State are the two most similar teams in the entire 12-team playoff. If you had to pick two teams that were most similar, I think I would put Notre Dame and Penn State. Physical, strong defenses. Defenses don't give up a lot of easy anything. Teams that like to try to run the ball. Teams with quarterbacks that can make plays. To me, I think teams that are inconsistent offensively, but again, defensively, that's where their identities lie. I think these two teams are incredibly evenly matched up.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Penn State's offense is just a little bit better than Notre Dame's offense. But yeah, both defenses are physical. They fly to the football. They cause turnovers, and this is going to be a slugfest in my eyes. I mean, this feels like a low-scoring slugfest, and it kind of has the feeling of who's going to get that like late touchdown to clinch it, right? Who's going to have that one drive late in the game to clinch like a 17-13 game?
Yes.
And I think that's going to be Penn State. And the reason I say that is I just feel like Penn State has just like playmaking wise, offensive wise, I think I just give them a slight edge. And I think that's because like Drew is a much better passer than Riley Leonard. I feel like Riley like panics a little bit too much. I don't think he's that good of a passer. I mean, I think he's an efficient passer, but I don't think he's that good of a passer. So I think Penn State just makes one or two more plays to win a low scoring game.
Yeah, I think I thought the exact same thing when I saw the matchup. I really like. I think I said it last week when we were talking to Mecca Dunn. I think this is the best Notre Dame team that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah,
and I a lot of respect for them, but I think Penn State has just a couple more horses than Notre Dame does, and I think Penn State is going to get this win. Now, again, I think they're insanely evenly matched up. To me, it's a coin toss, like you said. 17-13, I think feels very right in a game like this.
Yeah.
But neither side coming out on the 17 side is going to surprise. If Notre Dame's up 17-13 at the end, it's not going to surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, same here.
I really do feel like this is very much like it's not like 50-50. I think Penn State has a little edge, but I think it's like 50.5 to 49.5, right? Like that's where I think that leans. Like I think this is just incredibly evenly matched up. And I think I'm with you, Chad. I think Penn State has enough. They have enough horses on that offensive side to make just that one extra play that Notre Dame isn't going to make.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's Notre Dame -2.5, and that sounds about right. I mean, it just sounds right.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why everybody's like, oh, Notre Dame, easy. Definitely. I keep seeing people that are like, oh, Notre Dame's going to steamroll Penn State. And I'm like, and I don't remember who it was. Somebody here in Cleveland did like a poll. Maybe it was Matt Fontana over at Big Play. But they did a poll of like Notre Dame or Penn State. And it was like 80% Notre Dame, 20% Penn State. And I'm like,
I don't know. That Notre Dame offense is not impressive at all. I don't see what the deal is.
Yeah. I don't. And listen, I think both teams are very similar in how they do things. It kind of like Notre Dame did to Georgia. They can play an ugly half and then play like a good 10 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
It feels to me like whichever team plays the good 10 minutes is going to win the game.
I gotta be honest with you right now. Since we're on college football for a second, I'm watching the FCS national championship game right now. Do you have it on?
No,
North Dakota State and Montana State are going at it.
Yeah.
North Dakota State was up 21-3, and Montana State's 15-0 right now. North Dakota State's 13-2. North Dakota State was up 21-3 with 10 minutes to go in the third. Montana State made it 21-18. North Dakota State just got a touchdown, 28-18, but Montana State just scored again with like 10 minutes to go in the fourth, 28-25 in the FCS National Championship game.
What a game. What a game. All right, let's finish up.
Sorry.
I do see our special guest in the background here, so we're going to get to him in just a minute. But let's finish up with the game that's happening in Dallas, or Arlington, I guess, at Jerry World, the Cotton Bowl. The Ohio State Buckeyes traveling to Texas, of course, to take on Texas, because, of course, that's how that's going to work.
Right.
So they had to go way out west to the West Coast to play Oregon. Now they got to go to Texas to play Texas. But Ohio State and Texas in the Cotton Bowl, Chad. Give me your thoughts on this one.
Listen, Ohio State has reached a level in these playoffs now where the only team that's going to beat them is themselves. And Texas is a very good team. I don't want to take anything away from Texas, but they're also they're very good, but they're also inconsistent. And I mean, as long as Ohio State if they just avoid the letdown, they're going to win. How can you bet against them? How can you see it any other way right now with the way they've played the last two games? They are in a rhythm. They are playing dominant defense. They're playing fast. They are attacking. They're pushing the ball upfield. There is literally no flaws in Ohio State's game right now. And Texas turns the ball over. As athletic as they are, they turn the ball over. And I don't see this going any other way but an Ohio State win.
I mean, Ohio State has played two teams that have had outrageously explosive offenses this season, right? Tennessee had an explosive offense all season long. Oregon, one of the best offenses in all of college football, consistently all season long. This Ohio State Buckeyes team, defensively, you talked about it a lot last week, just playing with this wild chip on their shoulder. They're playing aggressive and mean, and they're getting to the quarterback. And those corners are making plays, and the safeties and the linebackers. Jack Sawyer's got to be setting some kind of record for passes swatted down in a season, man. And Tuimoloau on that defense. I mean, they're just everybody on that team, on that defense is playing well. I think Texas has players like, again, I'm a bit of a Quinn Ewers believer. I know he's not real popular in Columbus, but I'm a believer in Quinn Ewers. I think they have a couple weapons, but I don't think this is as good of an offense as either Tennessee or Oregon for sure.
Yeah.
And if that defense comes out and plays with that chip again, I just don't see Texas being able to do what they want to do. And then offensively, it's not a great Texas defense.
No.
Offensively, they should be able to get what they want to get. So I think I said it in last week's game against Oregon. I watched them lose by 1 at Oregon in a game where they made a ton of mistakes. They cleaned it up. They played well, and they won by a lot. I think this is a multiple score victory for Ohio State. I think it's a multiple touchdown victory. I would say it's like a 42-28 game.
Yeah. It sounds right to me. It sounds right to me. Again, Texas is another offense. They're not as good as Oregon, but they're not going to be shut down. So yeah, like 42-21, 42-24, somewhere in that area. As long as, I mean, maybe we can send a couple of Ohio State cheerleaders over to Burt Auburn's sidelines, and he'll miss a couple of field goals. I don't know. So, did you see that? Did you see the Arizona State cheerleader?
Oh, it was great. He walked right in front of him. Yeah. All right. So we're both on the same page, and we both think, how wild would it be for Ohio State and Penn State to play in the national championship?
That'd be amazing. That'd be
wild.
Amazing.
Wild. Well, that's what we both picked. So we'll see what happens. All right, Chad, our special guest is here. And speaking of wild and speaking of amazing,
this guy's a party animal, everybody.
Oh, well, wild and amazing, this guy in and of himself, for sure. But the topic we're going to talk about, and that is the Columbus Blue Jackets in a season where none of us had any idea what to expect, to be honest with you.
Right.
We previewed this with our special guest, and he didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what to expect because of all the uncertainty and because of the tragedy and all of that. Well, we've got a Columbus Blue Jackets team that is right now just on the doorstep of being in the playoffs. Again, we're only halfway through the year, so they got to keep playing this way all the way through, but they are contending night in and night out. They are taking on the identity of their head coach, and this guy has got an on-the-glass seat for every minute of the action. He covers the team for, I guess it's FanDuel Sports now. Do we call it that now? I think it's FanDuel Sports now.
Yeah, FanDuel Sports
It's
Network.
just wherever you watch them. But he covers the Blue Jackets. It's Dave Maetzold. Dave, welcome on back to the Garage Beers podcast.
Man, how do I live up to that, guys? How do I live up to that kind of introduction? That's almost impossible.
You don't, Dave.
All right.
No.
All right. Okay.
We'll do the talking. You just sit there and look pretty, Metz. Okay?
That's fine. That's fine. I'm ready to go.
Hey, did you wash Marshy's mouth out with soap from that
Oh my
the other
God.
night?
Let me tell you something, man. I heard him say it, and it's so quick. It's bang, bang. I'm like, what do I do here? And then I don't know if you saw it when he walked away. He always walks away and turns around and looks at me and looks at the camera guy like, are we good? Are we good? I'm like, well, we're good except for that little F-bomb you just dropped right there. But other than that, we're great.
Maybe don't do that again.
Yeah, that's right.
It's hockey, people. What do you expect?
What do you expect? And then I don't know if you guys heard it. If you watched the post-game show, Michael Putia was on with Brian Giesenslaw and Jean-Luc Grandpierre.
Yeah.
And Jean-Luc was talking to him about the World Junior Tournament because Finland, his home country, had advanced to the championship game. So Jean-Luc was asking him about hockey in Finland, and he goes, how big are the rinks in Finland? And I didn't hear this, so I won't get the quote exactly right. But Putia goes, oh, man, they're as big as effing airports over there. I'm like,
Yeah, let's go.
That's 2 in one night.
Well, I'm starting to think maybe we're too sensitive about the word.
Maybe.
Let's take a page out of Finland's book. If Tuna can say it, we can say it.
I'm not going to test it right now. I'm just saying
No,
that.
I wouldn't know. If I were you, I wouldn't.
All right. Thank you.
We can. You can on this show, Dave. You can on this show.
I'll get to it eventually. I'm sure something will piss me off. I'll get to it.
So, Dave, are you in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh. I was trying to showcase the wonderful PPG Plaza right here behind me. You see that?
Beautiful.
It is pretty.
Right?
It's pretty.
I mean, I'm doing the best I can.
I can almost smell it through the screen, but otherwise,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Listen, I'm not the biggest Pittsburgh fan, but, we
No,
got to
right.
come here a couple times a year, so it's all right.
Pittsburgh's nice when the sun is up.
Hey, it's been a while though since you've been in Pittsburgh for a huge game.
Yeah.
That like the Jackets have, man. I mean, what's the vibe going on around there right now?
Well, I mean, here we are sitting in Pittsburgh, a place where they never win, right? And they're playing an aging Pittsburgh Penguins team that's right there with them in the playoffs. And I know this team is feeling confident, not just because of the win over St. Louis, but because of the way they played here for the last really month plus,
Yes.
and because of some of the teams that they've beaten. So they got to come in here thinking they're going to get rid of a whole lot of demons here tomorrow night, right? They've got a young team that can score a lot of goals. They can hang with Sid and Malkin and the aging Pittsburgh veterans. There's no Jake Gensel here to deal with anymore. So, I mean, they've got to feel really good about coming into this game, which they know means something. If the Jackets win this game, they can vault over the Penguins and put themselves into a little bit firmer position where the postseason is more of a realistic possibility, a realistic part of the conversation for sure.
Now, that being said, you talked about the huge game, and you talked about a place they never win on Pittsburgh, which is in Pittsburgh, but Jackets have had a lot of trouble on the road so far this year, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference? What's been going on there?
It's if any of us knew the answer to that question, right? Because we ask Dean Evison all the time, like, what's going on? He acknowledges it. He acknowledges it with his team. They're fantastic at home. They score so many goals at home. 9 times now already this season. They've scored 6+ goals. They're the leading goal scoring team at home in the National Hockey League. Tremendous.
It's wild. It's wild.
What happens when they drive down? Well, we didn't drive. What happens when they come over to Pittsburgh? What happens when they go to Chicago or whatever? What happens? Nobody knows. So hopefully, again, that's one of the things that they can exercise tomorrow is get that demon out of their game and figure out a way to find some road success for sure, because it's a glaring imbalance there, home and road.
Yeah, 100%. And it has been so fun to watch them at home, just from the fan perspective. Just that it's like a fireworks display inside the building at Nationwide Arena. But it's good to hear that you've had those conversations, and that Dean Evison is acknowledging that, like, I don't know what the issue is, but if we want to get to where we want to get, we got to play better on the road. Here's the thing. I heard some players talking this week that got me all fired up, Dave. You know this. You talk to these guys all the time. I think a lot of times when you see interviews, when you see press conferences, all that stuff, and you start asking players about like playoff positioning and seeding and here's where you're at and here's where this, You get that very standard player answer all the time, which is, hey, we're just focused on one game at a time. We're focused on that. That's what we're going to do. One. I loved what I heard out of several Blue Jackets players this week, which was, hell yeah, we're trying to make the playoffs. Like, yes, we are trying to push for the playoffs. Goal number 1 is the playoffs, and then goal number 2 is whatever happens from there. But it just felt like it seems like it should be a pretty standard thing that that's something that guys will talk about. But when you ask players, it's always that canned answer. So to hear something different I thought it was great. And it seems like it's a vibe that's taken over the entire locker room.
Well, and part of it is, too, we're now in January. We're halfway through. Tomorrow is the halfway point of the season. And when you get to that point and you're still in contention, you're in contention. It's not like we're talking about this in October where you've won 3 in a row and, hey, you've got 6 more points than the last place team. No, now everybody has played about 40 games. Again, it'll be 41 for the Blue Jackets. You're in it. You're in the conversation, and there's no point of denying yourself the fact that you are in the conversation. You've taken your West Coast trips. You've played a lot of the difficult teams twice already. You've played Edmonton twice. They're out of the way. You've played Toronto, Boston. You're done with Boston. You've taken 2 out of 3 from Boston. Hey, you're in it, man. And there's no reason to not think that way and to not talk that way. Of course we're in it. Of course we're a part of this conversation, because now, all of the stuff that we talked about that was looked at as a hurdle, things that they would have to put aside, put out of their mind, from the Johnny Gaudreau tragedy, obviously, to the injuries to some of their key players. They put all of those aside, and they're just going out and playing winning hockey. And I think now they got to be honest with themselves. They're good enough to consider themselves a real candidate for the postseason.
And by the way, you brought up the schedule there, Mets. And how the hell do we get to a point in the year where we're halfway through the year and one team has played 4 more games than another team?
Yeah,
I was sitting there looking at the point totals, and I was like, man, right in it. And then I looked at Tampa, and I was like, oh, they've played 4 less games. Like, how does this happen?
It's just weird. The whole scheduling thing is weird. We talk about this all the time. We have a trip coming up at the end of January into February where the NHL schedule makers have us going to Vegas and then to Utah. That makes sense. And then we go to Dallas. That makes sense. And then we end the road trip in Buffalo. That does not make sense.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of weird stuff like that happens.
And then you catch a bus back to Columbus from Buffalo, right?
Well, who knows? Depending upon what the weather's like, we might have to. But I mean, it's just a weird quirk in the schedule. Obviously, it all evens out. We all know that. But what I do think works well for the Blue Jackets is that trip that I just mentioned is their only really long trip, and it's their only trip where they got to go 2 time zones away. And I think that's to their advantage, especially late in the year. Everything else is close, right? It's Pittsburgh, it's New York. We haven't been in New York yet. We haven't played the Rangers, the Islanders, or at the Devils. Haven't been anywhere near there. I haven't been to Toronto yet. Those are all easy, quick trips. Get back home to Columbus in an hour and a half or 2 hours. And when it gets late in the year with a tired hockey team, that makes a difference.
Now, Dave, coming into this year, obviously, I mean, we talked about it in the preview. We didn't really have an idea of what to expect with this team, right?
Nope.
We knew Coach Evison was going to come in and instill structure and discipline, right? And and as far as this fan base goes, there's still a lot of scars from the last 20 years, right? It's this fan base doesn't really know what to make of this hockey team. Yep. So, and obviously you still see some people out there that are kind of maybe waiting for the other shoe to drop. What would you say to the fans or the people out there that think this team is overachieving as opposed to what they are now, which is what I believe, which is a great hockey team?
I would point them to players like Adam Fantilli, who, although he's having a great year doing everything but scoring, is not scoring goals yet. I would point to the fact that Justin Danforth, Boone Jenner, Eric Goodbranson, Yegor Chinnikov are all still injured and have not yet contributed yet. This is not a team that's at full strength, not even close to being at full strength. And I think you're seeing Kent Johnson get better every day. I think you're seeing Kirill Marchenko now, as a well-rounded player who can do more than just score goals, become a more confident player, especially on the power play when he just wants to rip it. You're seeing a team be more confident every day. And I think if they are able to get wins like this one at Pittsburgh, if they're able to go on the road to St. Louis and double up on the Blues after what they did to them at Nationwide the other day, they get more confidence, and then they roll into February and they're like, we're right here, boys. We are right here. Why not us, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it was Mark Scheig that he puts out his tweets after games that talk about like here's my like 3 or 4 takeaways from each game, and one of them you brought up Marchenko. One of them was just like Marchenko needs to keep shooting. I was like, I love that little bullet point. Just keep shooting the puck because good things happen when he does, man. But you brought up all those guys. I'll tell you, Dave, we talked about one area that scares us a little bit with this Blue Jackets team, and that is their performance on the road.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go someplace else there for a minute, but okay.
Well, we might be able to go there.
Also, can I just call time out here? What is the name of this show? What was the name of this podcast?
The Garage Beers Podcast.
Let's go. Yeah.
Come on, boys. You're making me wait. You're making me wait to open this fantastic German premium lager.
I kind of thought as soon as I hit the button to bring you on, you'd just be sitting there like this. And
come on, Mike.
Crack that thing open.
You know Max is going to have a beer.
I know the rules, boys.
Old German.
There we go. I found it on Market Street in Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh Brewing Company.
Is that a tall boy?
It's a tall boy. It's a long show, boys. It's an hour show.
Now it's the party. Okay. I'm so upset with you right now, Mike.
I failed us. I failed the show. I failed everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
I mean, once you get past the initial taste of great.
Also, after I finish this one, we're going to get into the fact that I had dinner with Jeff Svoboda tonight. And I'm just saying I might not have been your first choice today, boys. I'm just hearing, he goes, yeah, that's funny. They reached out to me too. I'm like, oh, okay.
We got to spread the love. We haven't had Jeff on in a while.
I'm just busting your balls.
Hey, you're always number one in our hearts, Max.
I'm just
you're
busting
always
your
number
balls.
one in our hearts. Damn it.
Only one of you said yes to us tonight. Only one of you said yes.
Yeah. No, he goes, sorry, I'm just seeing this. Oh, yeah. Well, that's always
man about clown, Jeff Swoboda.
My phone was dead. I didn't get it right away. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. New phone. Who this? I think that's what the kids are saying.
Who this? Yeah.
So here's the other area that terrifies me with the Blue Jackets. I am terrified when they go into a third period with a large lead. I'm terrified of it because.
Okay. So ask yourself this question. Why? Because that's when we're going to get to the issue. Why are you terrified?
Because a large lead always turns into a small lead.
That's right.
Feels like. Now, this year, because that happened a lot last year too.
Yep.
Last year they lost a lot of those games. This year they're still winning those games. They're up 5-1. It goes 5-4, and then they score an empty netter to make it 6-4. And you're like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
But they're still getting into that tight spot. So what's going on with this team? Tell us where we need to be getting to that's causing that kind of an issue as far as just closing out a game.
Right. So if you're talking about issues that the team needs to address and has addressed, frankly, of things that have cropped up repeatedly this season, it's difficult second periods where they play really well in the first and might have a 1 or 2 goal lead going into the first, and then they come out of the second period and they're down 4-2.
Yeah.
Or what you're talking about, which is not quite being able to close out games the way they want to. And again, it mostly happens on the road, although we don't have to go back very far. The Detroit game at Nationwide Arena where they tie it up 4-4, get a power play on the challenged goaltender interference, and then give up that late one. Oh, that was brutal.
Yeah. That was just perfect timing, though. Like that was just like immaculate timing. Him coming
and what a pass! And what a pass!
Yeah. By former Blue Jacket Tyler Mott, actually. Yeah. But I mean, it's still a young team, which people don't want to hear. They are getting better, which you have to acknowledge, and frankly, you just did. They're getting much better than they were last year. Last year, you would just hang on to the edge of your seat, hoping and praying they would find a way to not blow it. And I don't have that sense this year. And that's a team that's grown up. And that's a team that, frankly, you talked about having the personality of Dean Evison. I think part of that mentality is go, 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 go. Keep pressing. Keep trying to score goals. Keep trying to add to that lead rather than sitting back and trying to protect a 2-goal lead or try to protect a 1-goal lead or whatever the case may be. I think his mentality is, no, go. Get 6. Get 7. Keep adding on if you have that opportunity. And I think the players appreciate that style of play. And I think it results in less panic when things start to go south. Like, okay, we've been in this situation before, but we've also pulled ourselves out of this situation before. That's what we've seen out of this team that's different from last year.
Yeah, that's perfectly said, because that's the biggest difference that I've noticed this year. Is yes, they're still giving up leads. They're still allowing teams to get closer than they should be and having trouble closing out games. But the difference is they're not sitting back on their heels, because in years past, you could see them. You could see them basically playing not to lose instead of trying to win, and they just continue to attack. And that's a credit to the resiliency of this team. That's one thing. I think that's one of the major differences that I've noticed this year, Dave, is that the resiliency is so much different.
100%.
They have pushback when it comes to, if they score and they give up a goal again like 30 seconds later, like they sometimes have a tendency to do.
Yeah.
They push back. And in years past, they just haven't. So that confidence, I mean, it's got to be a credit to Dean Evison, no?
I think there are a lot of things that you can credit to him. That's one of them. I think his ability, or his willingness to let a player like Kent Johnson or Kirill Marchenko or Dmitry Voronkov or Cole Sillinger, still players who are still developing in their careers, go out and make a mistake and not get nailed to the bench. I mean, some of those players they've got so much creativity and so much talent. But if they make a mistake in the previous 2 years under previous regimes, they might come and sit for a while. They might miss a shift or two, or they might miss the rest of a period. I think Evison is fine with letting these guys go, knowing they're going to make a mistake. And if they make the mistake, learn from it and don't do it again, right? And I think that's a huge part of it. The other thing that I think that he has brought to this team is truly a team mentality. And the reason I say that is not because of some cliche that he offers us, but rather when we ask about individuals, we'll ask about a player who's had a good night. We'll ask about Zach, or we'll ask about Marchenko, or we'll ask about Jet Greaves when Jet Greaves got called up. It's not about the individual. It's about the team. And he always responds that way. Yes, it's great that player X had a great night tonight, but the team found a way to win. The team found a way to get it done on the power play. The team is finding a way to be better on special teams. And I've noticed that over and over again. And if he's telling us, he damn sure is telling the team the same thing. It's not about you sitting in stall number 3 on the left. It's about the whole team in this whole room.
Mets, we had Boone on just a couple of weeks ago, and after that interview, I was kicking my own ass because, and not to upset Dean Evison here, who wants to talk team only, but we talked about a lot of players with Boone, about the young players and what it's like for him as the captain to kind of sit and watch the young players develop, and then what it's been like to watch some of these veteran guys that have come from other organizations that have really quickly taken leadership roles with the organization here in Columbus. And then the one damn guy I didn't ask about was Zach Werenski. So I'm not making the same mistake again with you. Dude, Dave, this guy finally healthy for this much of a season at this point. And it's not surprising that Zach Werenski is good, but he's one of the best. Like, he fills this role as offensively and defensively, and he just kind of does everything that you could possibly want him to do. Zach Werenski is just a star for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and it's got to be awesome watching him having the kind of year, especially after the injury last year. It's got to be awesome for you to watch him have the kind of year he's having this year.
Yeah, for so many different reasons, some of them that you touched on. He is a true Blue Jacket. He wants this organization to be a winning organization. He proved that a couple years ago when everybody was leaving and he signed the contract. He wanted to stay there. He was so thrilled with Johnny Gaudreau deciding to come to Columbus because he thought that would make a big difference. He's talked about that when Johnny signed, and here this year as we dealt with Johnny's passing, he talked about that and what it meant to him. But the other thing, and I'm reasonably good friends with his parents. I've known his parents for a long time, and they both acknowledge the fact that Zach wanted to put in the work last summer to be better for this team, and he did. And he's being rewarded for it. In fact, I talked to his mom the other day at the St. Louis game, and she said he worked so hard in the offseason, not just normal, hey, I'm a pro athlete, I got to work hard in the offseason, but he really put the extra effort in, and it's really paying off for him. And I got to say, and I know I've referenced Johnny a couple of times, but I know that the team, I believe, has pulled together so closely with his passing. They pulled together and are playing for him. And I think Zach personifies that. I think Zach wants to be that leader. He wants to help fill that void. Different positions, of course, but I think he wants to be a leader that leads this team through tragedy into something much more positive and something that everybody can be proud of. And I think he really believes that and really plays that way and comes to the rink that way every day.
Dave, one last question for me, and I'll see if Chad has anything else here. But we've talked about new leadership. We've talked about the new head coach in Everson, but you've got your new general manager there as well in Don Waddell. Now that you've experienced, kind of this new regime in Columbus with the Blue Jackets, what are your senses on Don Waddell's thoughts of how things are going with the team and areas you think he might be looking to address as, again, we're at the point where we're going to start talking about a playoff push here for the Blue Jackets?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think he addressed the team's issues right away when he got to Columbus. He got rid of a lot of players. Let's be honest. He let them walk. He didn't re-sign a lot of players. He addressed the situation with Elvis Merzlikins straight up and said, look, I'm not trading him. I'm not moving him. He's got to play better. He's going to be the starting goalie. He's got to play better. And I think by and large, Elvis has responded to that. We still have to tighten things up in terms of that whole goaltending duo, but I think Elvis has responded to that. And he goes out and he makes savvy moves. We haven't mentioned the name Dante Fabro much as a guy who's like he's not a big goal scorer. He's not a big guy who's gonna make a big, huge difference, but he has made a difference playing on that number one pairing.
Yes.
And we talk about him here and there. But think about how savvy Don Waddell was in waiting out the Nashville Predators until they put him on waivers. He wanted Fabro. He really wanted it, but he wasn't going to give up what the Nashville Predators wanted to get him. So he waited till they put him on waivers. Then they sign him, and then he goes to the number one pairing. Great move on his part. Denton Mateychuk. Could he have stayed up with the Blue Jackets after training camp? Absolutely, he could have. But they let him season a little bit in Columbus, and now when he steps in, he looks like he belongs here right from the jump, right? Like this is a guy who feels like the NHL was destiny for him, and he, through his first, 6 games now, he certainly doesn't look out of place at all. And the other things that both Don and Everson are doing is when a guy like Damon Severson is not playing well, look, I don't care what you're paying him. I don't care what the contract says. He sits. He's been healthy scratch now twice here in the last 6 or 7 games, and it's just a sign that look, you got to perform, or we got other people who will perform. And I like that attitude with this team. And they're not feeling sorry for themselves. They haven't felt sorry for themselves all year. They certainly could have with the injuries of Johnny and all they could have, but they're not feeling sorry for themselves. They're just pushing forward and playing really fun, exciting, aggressive hockey.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I'm curious about here, Dave, is in the past we've talked about how and we thought at least that the mix of young talent with veteran leadership it has been a good thing. It was going to be something to pull this team through.
Yep.
It really hasn't worked out in the past, but this year, the veteran guys, like Monahan, JVR, you just mentioned Dante Fabro. I know Severson isn't playing the best right now, but for the most part, veterans. Provorov just had his first 3-point night as a Jacket the other night.
Yeah,
veterans seem to be pulling their weight. How big is that for this team?
Especially with Monahan. I mean, Monahan between those two young Russians is just such a difference maker, right? He's a calm, steadying influence on the ice. He'll score goals when necessary. On the power play, Everson was telling us the other day, he plays that bumper position, which is not necessarily a glamour position at all, but he willingly plays it because he knows he's got talent all over the ice with him on that power play. And, another 3 assist night for Monahan the other night. No big deal. Business as usual. He's a very quiet, very serious, almost cerebral guy. To us, I've heard he's got an unbelievable sense of humor. We haven't seen it yet because he's very, very businesslike. But man, what a difference he's made. And I think one of the reasons you're seeing Voronkov and Marchenko have the kind of years they're having is because of Sean Monahan. That might be the biggest understatement of the year.
Mets, we always like to end with you on the most positive note that we can. So, again, here we are, the midway point of the season. You're there in Pittsburgh. And so give us the best case scenario. What do you think the best case scenario is for this Blue Jackets team for this season?
I really think that they now believe in themselves and realize that they have left some points on the cutting room floor. San Jose, Anaheim, Montreal. even Detroit the other night. And they know, look, if we would have won those games, we wouldn't just be on the cusp of a playoff spot. We'd be firmly into a playoff spot. So I think they take the confidence of the games that they have won over big teams, over big marquee NHL teams, and where they are in the standings right now and what they know they could be had they played that way in every single game of these first 40. And I think they're believing they're going to be in a playoff position when it's all said and done. The Eastern Conference is a big muddled mess right now. That makes it advantageous for the Blue Jackets to continue this push. The schedule is in their favor. As I already mentioned, they're not going west at all. They've got a lot of the Giants out of the way. I put them in a wild card spot right now.
Let's go. All right.
Let's go.
Listen, did you love listening to Dave Maetzold hanging out with us tonight? Well, then you'll love him just as much on FanDuel Sports Network, ringside reporter for the Blue Jackets, Dave Maetzold, legendary golfer, legendary beer drinker.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Drop that part.
Come on. We know it's
Getting
true.
guys to curse on TV.
I believe we were about 17 beers deep when you told us how about your golf prowess. So I believed it to this day. Dave Maetzold, man, so great to have you on. So good to catch up with you at the midway point of the Blue Jackets season. And I'm sure as they continue to push towards that playoff push, you'll definitely be on our list of guys that we contact, Dave.
I know how it goes. It goes Jeff Svoboda, Dave Maetzold, and then I don't know who comes after that. But
Nobody.
Fine.
Nobody.
All right.
Yeah, it's that or nobody. Dave, thank you so much for jumping on with us, man. Have a good night there in Pittsburgh. And man, for the love of it, bring home a win out of Pittsburgh, please.
I like the vibe right now. I think again they're going to exercise a lot of demons here tomorrow night.
All right, Dave. We'll catch you later.
All right, see you guys.
Yeah.
Dave Maetzold, ringside reporter for FanDuel Sports there in Columbus for the Blue Jackets. I love catching up with that guy, and I love what the Blue Jackets are doing. So we'll definitely catch up there. Chad, I want to do a very abridged version of this, like 30 seconds, because our next guest is already here, and I want to get him in because we got another crazy, exciting thing to talk about.
All right.
But we didn't do it last week. I want to do it this week. Chad, who's your asshole of the week this week?
Oh God, I didn't. Oh, I have to think of one on the fly here. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. That's
Why?
good. Huh?
He doesn't seem like an asshole.
Because his first name is spelled like my favorite R&B group from when I was growing up, and he shouldn't take
damn.
that. Jerk.
I
don't know. I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws here. That's all right. I'm just grasping at straws.
You didn't come in with nothing, Chad.
Yeah.
I should have warned you. I'm going with Baker Bros. They're back in full
Jesus
effect.
Christ.
And I just want to point something out. Baker Mayfield having a great year, and I root for him. He's in his 7th year in the NFL. It took him 7 years to develop into what he is now, which is great. Sometimes it takes guys time. Took him 7 years. He's going to be 30 by the time next year starts. There was no waiting for that. There was no waiting for that. And every time something happens with the Browns, the Baker dudes don't have to come out. There was a guy online going ballistic. I was like, dude, I sent him the link on Twitter. I said, here's the link to the Buccaneers team shop. Go buy yourself a jersey, dude. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my assholes of the week. Anyways, speaking of not an asshole of the week, speaking of a guy we'll give you the cheer of the week too. We're buddies with the guys from the Chase Down podcast, the official podcast of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Do some of the best work with the Cavaliers and covering them. And we're really excited because it's been a minute since we've talked to this half of the Chase Down podcast. So I'm going to bring him in right now. Find him online at Carter Shade. It's Carter Rodriguez. Carter, welcome back to the Garage Beers podcast.
Hello, sirs.
What's going on?
There he is. What's up, man?
Carter showed his beer right off the bat.
Oh yeah, right away. I got a new. I went to the game yesterday against the Hornets, and I got a new Cavs glass. I had to show it off for the pod.
Oh, it looks like that looks like
awesome.
a good beer in there. What's the beer in there?
It's a BrewDog Hazy Jane. I threw a big old New Year's rager at my house, like I was in college again, and had some leftovers. So had to tap into the reserves.
I love that. And you took, was it your son to the game?
My nephew,
my
brother and my nephew. It was his first Cavs game.
That looked really cool.
And we got to sit courtside for the whole game, which was like, it was so funny because it was his first Cavs game, and my brother and I were giggling driving home while he was asleep in the back seat, being like, "Well, we just ruined sports for him."
Yeah.
He got first game he ever goes to. He sits courtside the whole time, meets Darius Garland, gets his shirt signed. It's over. It's over.
Yes. Well, Carter, man, it is awesome to have you on. It's awesome to talk Cavaliers, and we wanted, we gotta get somebody on here talking Cavs tonight, because what a week it is for the Cleveland Cavaliers and for the NBA, to be honest with you. For the NBA to have two teams that are located in the locations that these two teams are, right? Oklahoma City and Cleveland, two of the smaller market teams in the NBA. Although I think in the NBA, Cleveland's pretty mid-market, but those are your two best teams. Cavaliers are now on their second winning streak of the season of 10 or more games. They're at 10. And again, even though it got close last night, I was mortified last night at the end of that game, thinking that Charlotte was going to hit a 3 at the end.
I just need our bench to stop tanking our net rating, man.
Yeah, right?
It's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
10 straight games of double-digit victories, but going up against an Oklahoma City Thunder team we're 31-4. They are 30-5. They're on a 15-game winning streak. They are coming off a pretty impressive victory over the Boston Celtics, man. You can't draw this up any better. It's on ESPN. It's national TV. This is going to be an incredible night in Cleveland.
Dude, I got to say, I was thinking about when was the last regular season game I was this keyed up for? It was probably a couple of those MLK Day games against the Warriors, or a Christmas Day game against the Warriors. I mean, this for whatever reason, I kind of have flipped to the point where I'm most interested in OKC showing some cracks, which goes a long way. It shows how far this Cavs season has gone, where I'm almost wanting Boston to beat them. When they played earlier or at the end of last week. I mean, this is as gargantuan of a regular season matchup as the NBA can provide. It's the first time since 1974 that two teams with this good of a win percentage faced off this late in the year. It's the first time a team on a 15-game win streak is playing a team on a 10-game win streak. Cavs haven't lost to the West. OKC hasn't lost against the East. Cavs are the best offense, a couple decimal points off from the best offense in NBA history. OKC is one of the best defensive teams in NBA history so far. It's a styles makes fights game. It's a size versus athleticism and chaos game. It's just going to be nuts, man. It's as good of a game as you can get with teams playing at the peak of their powers.
Yeah, it's. I hope they build this up because, again, and Chad and I have talked about this a ton on this show. We love it when our Cleveland teams aren't talked about. People scream about why people in Cleveland love to scream about why we're not getting the attention, and we're like, yeah, that's cool. Actually, we'll just be 31-4 over here, and you guys can pay attention to the Knicks and the Celtics and the Sixers and all these other teams, and we'll just be over here being 31-4. But in this specific matchup, man, I hope they hype it up. I hope this Wednesday ESPN is nothing but hype for this game because the ratings should be out through the roof.
Well, it's nice just to see that it got flexed in. I mean, apologies to the Pelicans and Trailblazers, which I believe is the game that got flexed.
You're not sorry. You're not sorry.
No, not one iota. But yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things where, well, if I do have a bit of Cleveland Napoleon complex, if I am a little salty about one thing, it's that teams, the media has been so quick to crown this OKC team as an on-par title contender with the Boston Celtics.
Yes.
Whereas the Cavs have been kind of shunted into the second. Even those who are as high on the Cavs as anyone have them well below, on another tier, basically.
Good. And that's what we're saying. Good.
Sure. But what's grumping me out is OKC hasn't gone any further in the playoffs than us.
Yeah. Right.
True. This team has made it to the second round once. They've made it to the first round. They got knocked out in the first round once, got knocked in the second round once. Sound familiar? I think they're getting a lot of credit because Shea kind of is considered a top 5 player at this point, or right there and the Cavs don't have a top 5 player consensus, but like, I don't see why they're getting all these bonus points. Why a guy like Jalen Williams, who has a nightmare playoffs against Dallas, and is a big reason why they didn't win that series, scot-free. No one cares. But Evan Mobley has a rough series against New York, and we still don't believe in him in certain corners of the internet. So that's my one Napoleon complex point. But overall, I'm completely fine riding under the radar. I mean, it's gonna be, man, I want it too much. I gotta say, boys, it's one of these. It's very rare that I get too hyped up for a regular season game. I'm too hyped up. I'm aware of it, and I can't stop it. I want this so bad, guys.
Well, and here's the thing, right? And this has been kind of my focus on the Cavs, and we'll see if you bring other things here as far as things that are just the most impressive to you. But I've come to find out over this last week that the thing that is most impressive to me about this Cavaliers team is that they just never have a letdown.
Nope.
When they go up against big time opponents, they are ready for the battle, even in a loss, right? Like even that Boston game that they lost, they were ready for that battle and they lost the game. And then when they go up against teams, like I said it last night after the game that you went to, I was terrified of a letdown in that game because they're coming off of this monster road trip out west where they go 4-0. And then the next game is this game against Oklahoma City. And here sits in between there this Charlotte Hornets team. And I'm telling you, dating back to every LeBron year, that's a game they lose almost 10 times out of 10 as they're gearing up for that next game. This team just doesn't do that. There's no letdowns in this team.
Well, I think a big part of it is how democratized what they do is. Yes. Donovan Mitchell had 2 points, with 2 minutes left in the second quarter. An everyone orbiting LeBron team can't really afford a not plugged in LeBron game. Whereas, Donovan can have a completely invisible first half. I was like, okay, Darius and Jared will pick it up.
We're fine. Up by 15. It's fine.
And then, so you just have such margin for error playing this way, being as healthy as they are, where you just kind of have 2 all-star level players on the court for 48 minutes. No one else can match it. But what's cool is they're not just winning by virtue of not playing bad lineups. They also have knockout punch lineups, you go back to that Denver game where, the key to beating Denver always has been when Jokic sits, kill him, and then break even every other time. Well, Denver was breaking even during the Jokic on the bench minutes. Didn't matter. The Cavs' best has been better than other teams' best, and their resting heart rate is higher than everyone else's resting heart rate. So it's like they're winning in 46 different ways. So if wave 43 isn't happening that day, it just doesn't matter because they got other levers to pull.
So which way do they need to beat Oklahoma City?
Okay, so this is a really tough matchup. I mean, they held Boston, this unbelievable offense in Boston, to 92 points in regulation. Boston only hit 9 threes against them. This team's defense is no joke, and that's even without Chet Holmgren. God help the NBA when Holmgren comes back and they're playing him and Hartenstein 48 minutes because the defense is bananas. I think, the thing that's important to note is that both teams are good on both sides of the ball. You're going to get a lot of Cavs offense versus OKC defense, and rightfully so. It's interesting. But the Cavs have the 7th best defense in the league. OKC has the 8th best offense in the league.
Right.
So, it's not like you get to take a break on the other end of the floor. It's not like those old Pistons that were like the best defense in the world. But they were going to score 76 in regulation. So if you found some hay, you would be okay. It's uphill sledding on both sides of the ball for both these teams. I think for the Cavs, the story of the game is going to be, can the guards get downhill? The Cavs are 4th in the league in drives per game this year, way up from last year. They're getting into the teeth of the defense regularly. The guards are catching the ball with advantage. They are getting into the paint. OKC's ball pressure at the point of attack is better than any team in the league. And that's even without Alex Caruso, who's been out with an injury. Kason Wallace, Lou Dort, two of the best guard defenders in the league. Are Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell going to be able to turn the corner? OKC gives up more corner threes than any team in the league. We actually just had Andrew Schlecht from The Athletic on. That's the one thing they give up. They pack the paint. They're chaos engines. They recover after the three really, really well, but that short corner is hard to get back to. But it doesn't matter if you don't get the defense destabilized in the first place. So I really want to see how, Lou Dort's a guy who's given Donovan problems before because he's built like a defensive end. He's big, he's strong. The lateral movement is really, really good. And frankly, if I'm being honest, OKC is one of these teams that has that reputation. So when you get that reputation, you get to be really physical at the point of attack.
Right.
So
right.
Dort's going to fight over screens. He's going to be swim moving. He's not going to be easy. And then even if you set a good screen on them, well, they'll just switch a guy like J-Dub or Hartenstein, and they'll be able to hang. There aren't a lot of weaknesses in this defense. So your good's just going to have to beat their good, and that's a scary proposition. It's a good thing Cavs have the best offense in NBA history, or a couple decimal points off from it as of now. The other thing go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Carter. Go ahead.
The other thing I'm looking at is Evan Mobley versus Jalen Williams. That's a really, really important matchup. This Thunder team is small. They're playing a 6'5" guy at power forward. That means they can be really, really switchy. They have done really, really well against bigs. And figuring out how to attack that size advantage artfully is really important. You are not going to beat OKC trying to post up and from 12 feet out and bump, pivot, turn. You will get the ball ripped from you. I heard a crazy stat on Locked On Cavs. Danny Cunningham does great work there.
Yep.
That OKC has more steals this year than they have turnovers at all.
That is insane.
Wow. They've got the best hands in the league. They are in passing lanes. They are all sturdy. Like, even though they're not tall, all those dudes are thick boys. Like, you're not going to move them. So what I want to see is Donovan and Darius turn the corner and find Evan in the pocket where he can rise up quickly, use his length, use his athleticism for floaters, layups. I don't want to see a steady dive to post-ups because it's just going to eventually play into OKC's hands. This is a really hard matchup, guys.
Well, but that's the Cavaliers style. It's the best thing about the Cavaliers this year. And you talked about it. They can beat you 50 different ways. I think you said 46, so maybe I'll keep it to the official stat. 46 different ways. But every game is different, right? They've had a few games where they have found that advantage on. It's been a lot of Jared Allen who will go bump in the post, and it works in those matchups. But, I think it continues to impress, and we've talked about it all season. The passing of this Cavaliers team is unbelievable, and it's not just one guy. It's not just like, oh, Darius Garland's a wizard with the basketball and he can make flashy passes. How many times?
It's 2014 Spurs stuff, It's that Kawhi, Boris Diaw, Duncan, Parker, Ginobili. Everyone's contributing.
And they're making passes there. I think it was that Hornets game. And I think it was Darius. I think it was Darius to Mobley. Maybe it wasn't Darius. I don't remember who it was, but it was that one pass into Mobley. The pass got thrown, and I thought it was going directly out of bounds, and all of a sudden Evan Mobley was there, and he dunked it. And it was like, all right, but the ball movement there, like when I hear you talking about Oklahoma City and, they're not great. If you can collapse them, then they may have trouble getting out to the perimeter. The Cavs are really good at that.
Yeah, they're good at
collapsing the defense.
But ball security is going to really, really matter here. A team like Boston didn't get into the turnover game much. They only had like 13 or 14, I think, in that game. But that's an ISO mismatch hunting kind of Boston Celtics team. The Cavs don't have that luxury. They're going to have to pass their way to shots. And when you have to pass a lot, that OKC loves that. They love to jump in passing lanes. They love to mess things up. And a stat that really matters here is who's going to take care of the ball better. Cavs are the second in the league in assist to turnover ratio. OKC is third. These teams are. I know I'm being a little reductive, but these teams are just phenomenal, man. Like this is going to be, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a finals level intensity kind of game where both teams are really trying to prove that they are the special one, and like it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough sledding on both ends of the floor.
That atmosphere is going to be wild too.
I'm glad the first one's in Cleveland. They play like 8 days later in OKC as well.
The other thing that I think is so impressive about this Cavaliers team, and I think it's going to it's only going to benefit them as this season wears on, and it's why I just don't see a breakdown coming. I went to look up the starter minutes, right? Minutes the starters play in the NBA. And I got to a site that finally ranked it for me, but it only showed me the top 25, and then I had to pay more money to see the rest of the list. The Cavs aren't on the list.
On NBA.com later.
Yeah.
The Cavs aren't on the list. The Cavaliers starters, they're not even in the top 25 of minutes played as a starting unit.
I'll tell you who their leader is. It's Donovan Mitchell. My boy Ziggy, Cavs Twitter legend, tweeted this literally today. That Donovan Mitchell leads the league in minutes per game. He's 68th in the league.
Leads the team. Yeah. It's unbelievable that they're doing this and they're not running these dudes ragged. They're not. I think Donovan's down like almost 5 minutes a game from last year.
Yeah, he's right on the border of 30 and 31 minutes a game. It's bananas.
So you go into a game like this against Oklahoma City, and they're not a team that they don't play their starters crazy minutes. I think they're right in the middle of the league. But you go into a game like this, and it's like, all right, if we need to push our starters a little bit more in this one, we can, because we don't run them ragged. They're going to be fresh if we need them for a game like this.
Though I just don't know if that's going to be who they are. Kenny spent a couple years with Steve Kerr. And Kerr is a guy who likes to play 10 guys, whether he's had 10 guys to play or not, Steve Kerr likes to play 10 guys. And like, that's pretty much what we've seen from Kenny is you're going to get at least 9. And depending on how those shifts go in the first half, certain guys might not get invited to play in the second half, but like, I think he's a guy who actually, he talked about his FIBA experience with Team France, where they were playing 11 guys in 40-minute games, so 8 less minutes than an NBA game. And I think what a superpower that the Cavs have, especially having, 10, 11 rotation quality players, is their shifts can just be really impactful. He can be like, hey, you're playing 5 minutes. You're going to play 5 or 6 minutes to start the game. You better be at 130%, bro. Because these other guys have to ration, like the Knicks just lost to the zombie Magic tonight. And, like those guys they have to ration their energy. They have 5 players in the top 30 for minutes per game. Ooh. They're starting 5, know, and like, I'm not a purist here. Ty Lue didn't love to run a long rotation. He's a great coach. I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong road up the mountain here, depending on what team you have. But like what Kenny is doing is working really well for this team.
Yeah, quite clearly. And obviously it is working. Just a couple other things before we let you out of here, Carter. We obviously the focus is going to be heavily on the big name players for the Cavaliers, those 4 guys, right? Darius and Donovan and Mobley and Allen. But there's so many, like, it just feels like wherever the Cavaliers turn this year, it's productive, right? I go to a guy like George Niang, who really struggled to fit in with the way the Cavaliers played last year and had his moments, but really inconsistent, kind of tough year for George. Not this year. George Niang, I feel like every time the ball comes off his hands, it's going in the hoop. Like, he is confident. He's ready to go. And I feel like there's a coaching element to this too. And maybe it's the same thing for Ty Jerome. Maybe it's the same thing for some of these other guys. But like, these guys just have the green light all the time. Just catch the ball and shoot it.
Yeah, I think there's an empowerment part of it too. But there's also like, I think something that I talked to. I jumped on the dunker spot with Nikias Duncan with Justin, and I mentioned that sometimes I do worry about some of these role players turning back into pumpkins. Under the highest, the brightest of lights. And Justin kind of mentioned well, I'm not as worried about that because Darius Garland's great again, and there is a degree to which when your top 4 guys are playing this well, it just makes these guys' jobs easier. George Niang's 3-point percentage is 1% higher than it was last year. It's not like he's shooting the cover off the ball year over year, or he's still well below his career average from 3 this year. But because the context is so much better around him, because you're up 9 when he takes that 3, and you're all of a sudden you're up 12 as opposed to you're up 2. It's just everything feels better. Everything feels easier. So I do think that's an important caveat to apply to any of the role player discussions, which is that the top, Darius had a lost year last year. When your point guard is not there or not playing well, your role player is going to have a harder time. They just are. With that said, I do think there is a degree to which this team has collectively agreed that they're not going to let a perfect possession be the enemy of a good possession anymore. There's a lot of possessions now. I don't remember. I haven't checked recently. Actually, I can pull it up right quick. I'm moving quick. They are 28th in the league in passes per game. Now, that stat does not track with this idea of this beautiful game basketball kind of that we're seeing. You kind of assume that, this team that's playing really pretty basketball, they've got to be near the top of the league in passes per game, especially since they're playing at a faster pace, la-di-da-di-la-da. But the reality is, the first pass that they make that leads to a clean look, it's going up.
Yes.
They're not doing. How many times did we see the Cavs have a 7 or an 8 out of 10 look, and the guy pump faked and drove and tried to kick it out, but the defense at that point was able to reset, get their feet under them, and then all of a sudden Donovan's taking a grenade at the end of the shot clock. This team shoots when they're open. They attack empty space with the intention of scoring. Darius's 3-point attempts per 36 way up. Dean Wade is letting it fly. Everyone is letting it. Isaac Okoro's 3-point attempt rate way up. Obviously, would love to have him back for Wednesday. I don't think it's going to happen. But everyone does have that freedom to just go, and I think that does a lot for role players. Is you're not going to get punished. Sam Merrill was shooting 32% from 3 2 weeks ago for the season. Yeah. His minutes haven't dropped. His attempts hadn't dropped because, Kenny's no, that's what you do. I need you to play the way you play, and I think that that philosophy extends to the whole team.
And I think that freedom and that trust by the coach extends into other areas of the game, right? I think it's been impressive to watch. Take a guy like Sam Merrill, like you talked about. You could talk about numbers wise, but eye test wise, just the hustle he puts in on defense. Dean Wade defensively has been great. The other areas of the game, when they feel the freedom to do what they're supposed to do, right? Shoot that 3 ball, Sam Merrill, because that's what you're here to do. They're putting in that extra effort on the other areas of the game, and it's showing up.
Yeah, and they're getting to stretch their legs a little bit. I mean, the Cavs beat Boston down the stretch of a game where Isaac Okoro goes and sets a screen for a guard, catches the ball in the short roll, and then feeds Jared Allen baseline for a dunk. Isaac wasn't doing a lot of short roll playmaking last year.
No.
He was camped in the corner and told to hang there.
Yes.
And our podcast is not a JB Bickerstaff slander pod. I think we've been much more positive on his tenure than a lot of Cavs Twitter has been. But there is a difference in the offensive philosophy, especially pertaining to how the role players are playing.
Well, and I've said it a million times. A lot of the base level core identity that this top 10 defense has comes from JB Bickerstaff and what he instilled in them. So you got to give him props for that.
Look at the Pistons. They're having a great year. So anyone who's telling me JB is he might not have been the right coach for this team anymore. In fact, I'm sure he wasn't, based on, kind of the reporting coming out and, all that stuff. But like the Pistons, who were a hilarious travesty last year, are a 500 basketball team this year.
Yeah, that's right. So I know you were in the background when we were talking to Dave Maetzold, and we always end on something positive. I don't mean to kind of let you out of here on something negative. It's not a negative, but it's an honest look at the Cavaliers, Carter. 31-4 means that this team, and you talked about it, means that this team hasn't really shown a lot of cracks. If there's been any cracks, it's a sliver of a crack. It's like the beginnings of a crack that then gets filled in. So as you watch them and you continue to see them progress into the season as we are 35 games in, where are the areas that you identify as a guy that watches closely and analyzes this team where you go, that could be a little crack. That could be a thing that could be a problem.
I'll talk about roster construction first, then I'll talk about some team building wonk stuff second, because that's more boring. Roster construction first. This team has 2 centers, 2 guys who can reliably play center, and one of them starts at power forward. So it gets a little challenging if you're going to miss 2-3 games with Jared Allen, you're going to miss 2-3 games with Evan Mobley, or one of them just gets in foul trouble. The only thing this is a team that does not want to play Tristan Thompson rotation minutes. He's a veteran leader. That's what he is at this point, and there's no shame in that. But their only move they've really reliably gone to is playing Omega small, kind of scramble defense with Dean Wade at the 5. Now, those minutes have gone much, much better this year than in past experiments. Dean is protecting the rim better than he ever has. He's rebounding better than he ever has. It's okay. It's fine. But, if you're at a spot where you're in a playoff series and Jared Allen misses a game because he had like a tweaked ankle or something, it gets scary really quick from a depth perspective. So I worry about, I really think this team would be really well served to find a 4-5 on the buyout market, or via trade or whatever it may be, because I just think they get, it's funny that a team with a reputation for playing big gets small real fast the second one of those guys isn't available. And so that and you're seeing OKC figure that out, because they really only have 2 centers on their roster. So, I would love to see that. Now I'm going to get into the boring wonk salary cap stuff. The Cavs are about $1.5 million over the tax right now.
Yeah.
They are not over either of the aprons, which are the more restrictive parts of the salary tax, the salary cap, but they will be, an apron team next year, almost certainly, after all these extensions that they signed this summer kick in. So they're in a weird spot, because do they really want to start the tax clock this year when they're that close to the threshold? Probably not. With that said, everyone who makes more than what it would take to trade someone out and fill the roster spot is in the rotation.
Right.
So is this team willing to get worse to trade a guy? I'm not saying there's no reporting, but a guy like George Niang, who might be in the playoff rotation if they're healthy, he might not be. Are they willing to, attach a second rounder to a guy like that and pick up a guy making $3 to $4 million to cut to deduct the salary tax? Will the chemistry of the team for a beloved player who's helpful for them, are they willing to do that? Is that something they're willing to do? Or do they want to go the other way and use what remains of their mid-level exception and add and just be okay being a tax team? Because you're a title contender.
Yeah.
Every other title contender is well past that second apron,
Right.
I saw that the Boston Celtics tax penalty next year will be bigger than their last like 15 years of tax penalties combined. Like this CBA is so restrictive and challenging, which is part of the reason why the Cavs might want to duck the tax, so they can avoid any of those clocks started, any of those repeater penalties starting. It's a really, I know it's not a sexy thing to talk about, and like, but like it's actually kind of a challenge. I mean, if you ask me my preference, it's you're a title contender, and title contenders don't get worse on purpose. So if you're gonna make, so that leaves a narrow thread for the front office or a narrow hole for the front office to try to thread, which is, can we get better and duck the tax? And what are we willing to do to make that happen? Can we find someone to play ball? If you were to ask me what I think is going to happen, I think it's going to completely stand pat and see what the buyout market looks like. Use a little bit of leftover mid-level money to figure themselves out. But like, it's a real consideration, and it's not a stupid one. Like, it might sound stupid, but this CBA is as restrictive as it's ever been, and it means teams have to make hard choices.
Well, and you talked about your preference. Your preference is exactly mine. I would love to find that other big man. I only want to do it on the buyout market, unless they find that weird trade that helps them duck the cap but also get better. You brought up a guy like George Niang. His name's going to keep getting floated. Karis LeVert's name is going to keep getting floated in these trade rumors.
Yeah, Karis is a tricky one because he's expiring, and he's hitting his age 30. He's in his age 30 season.
But he's also your sixth man off the bench, right?
And he's been unbelievable this year. These are hard. I'm telling you, the team building, like every time. Can I rant? Can I be a little diva for a second?
Go on then.
Every time I see an executive on a rebuilding team get all these flowers about the assets they've picked up and all that stuff, I'm always like, that's the easy part. Like, it's not hard to make moves when you don't have to consider the on-court product.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just not that hard, and it's also just lottery tickets. You're buying scratchers. This stuff is hard. This is where front offices tell you who they are. Is how do you navigate a challenging cap environment and put together the best team you can, not just for this year, but for the next 4 years, because we're going to see teams like the Boston Celtics start having attrition. Look at the Denver Nuggets over the last 3 years. They're just bleeding role players.
Yes.
And it's going to happen. Like these penalties, I'm telling you, if you actually, like, if your listeners haven't looked up what the second apron is, if you're in the second apron like 3 years in a row, your first round pick, no matter how your season goes to 30. Drops to the end of the first round. Like, you can't aggregate salaries. There's so much crazy stuff. So these teams are going to start getting handcuffs put on them. So the Cavs are in a spot where maybe they might dip into that second apron for a year, but because they're so locked up, they actually have the possibility of just hanging around. And if there's ever been an environment just to be pretty damn good for 5 straight years, it's this cap environment. So these are tough decisions. I don't envy Kobe Altman and Mike Gansey in the front office.
Well, they've been pretty damn good so far.
Yeah, they're pretty good at this, I would say. And
it's coming to a fruition this year. And that I'm so happy, because the vision has been questioned over the years, including as late as last year when they had that exit to Boston, even though they were half the team missing.
I'll be perpetually grumpy with everyone who wanted us to get less unique, more boring, so we could look better on a depth chart on ESPN.com. Couldn't be me.
You just got to give all the credit. Kobe Altman, the front office, Gansey. But, man, Kenny Atkinson right now is King Midas. He's King Midas right now, and everything that dude is touching is turning to gold. And everything that he told us he was going to focus on has been exponentially better this year.
Sometimes just a different voice, man. And he's a hell of a coach. He got jobbed in Brooklyn. Didn't deserve to get fired there, and the Cavs are reaping the rewards.
Yeah. All right, Carter, we're going to call it quits. We already have gone over our showtime, but it's been so much fun. Carter Rodriguez is one half of the Chase Down podcast, the official podcast of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Go follow it on Twitter. Go follow Carter at Carter_Shade. for all the best Cavs breakdowns. And Carter, man, get some rest tomorrow or today, I guess, when people are watching this, because Wednesday night, it's going to be a night. It's going to be an event.
I'm
Cavs,
too keyed up.
Thunder,
I'm too keyed up, Mike.
in Cleveland. Let's go. 2 teams on 10-plus game winning streaks, and they're clashing in Cleveland. Doesn't get any better than that, Carter. Thank you so much for coming on to Talking Cavs with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
How about Carter Rodriguez of the Chase Down podcast? And Chad, this podcast, our show, has gone like a snap, like snap my finger, and our show is over.
It's been a while. It's been real.
It's been real. It's been a great time.
Yeah.
We're going to get ready to end our show, but we can't end our show without our positive segment.
Yeah.
Our positive segment of the week, because we always like to send you off on a good note. So our positive segment of the week, our 3 cheers of the week. Chad, I'm going to give you a chance to make up for the asshole of the week. Who's your cheer of the week this week?
I'm going to North Dakota State, Montana State, man. Whew. What an ending. North Dakota State ends up winning 35-32. Montana State gets a touchdown with a minute to go. Onside kick. 3 Montana State players run right by it, the football, allowing North Dakota State to recover. They were this close to getting the football back, but North Dakota State wins it, man. What a hell of a game. Cheers,
man. And North Dakota State, just perennial powerhouse, FCS. Yeah. Unbelievable.
10th FCS title. FCS leading 10th title.
Yeah. I know it's flawed or whatever, but I'm giving my cheer of the week to the college football playoffs. I'm going to keep it in college football. You're doing FCS. I'll do FBS.
Sure.
I know it's flawed. I think they will work on it. I don't think a team like Oregon should have gotten the draw that they got coming into the playoff, but they'll work on it. But again, I love the process. I love the top 12 teams. I love that we're not arguing about leaving an undefeated conference champion out of the playoffs.
Right.
I love everything about what this does for the sport. I love the possibilities of what it will do moving forward. We are in the semifinals, and it has been an absolute blast to watch these games, and I cannot wait for this weekend to watch the rest of them. So I'm giving my cheers to college football and the playoffs. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for episode.
You're good to go.
What'd you say?
I said it needs a little tweaking, but it's, good to go. Otherwise.
Hey, first year of anything.
Right.
That's where you find the tweaks. You make them, but I think they'll do it. And I look forward to watching them do that. But
for sure.
That is going to do it for us for episode 245 here on Garage Beers. Big shout out to our special guest tonight, Dave Maetzold, ringside reporter for FanDuel down in Columbus, and Carter Rodriguez from the Chase Down podcast, 2 awesome special guests to talk to us about the Jackets and the Cavs. Big shout out to the OBR. Make sure you go to theobr.com and you subscribe, and make sure whether you're watching us on YouTube or Twitch or wherever, you hit follow, you hit subscribe, you hit like. We appreciate all the support on that. And our biggest thank you goes out to all of you, everybody that watches, everybody that listens. 245 episodes in the can, and we really appreciate your support. We love that you join us week in and week out. That's going to do it for us. Make sure you go follow the show at The Garage Beers on all the socials. For Joey Whalen, who wasn't here again because we're recording on an off night, and he can't make it on these nights, but go follow him anyways at Garage Beers Joe. For Chad Meyer at Garage Beers Chad, I am Michael Keefe at Garage Beers Mike. We will talk to you next week. Until then, cheers, everybody.